Excellent. Well, listen, thank you very much. As Jerry mentioned, I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about key technology trends, because the goal here is to say where's a lot of value creation happening, where's some value destruction happening, and what are the implications for Los Angeles. And hopefully this will lead to a good discussion with our panel. So let me just start out first of all here. So maybe we could get the first slide up. I'm going to start just covering it orally here. So let me just start out on the Easton Center. The broad focus of the Easton Center is leadership preparedness in a technology-driven world. So for the MBA program here, we want to make sure that all of our students are ready and equipped to, number one, go into technology-based jobs. So whether that's Google or whether that's Amazon, whether that's companies in Seattle such as Microsoft, et cetera, or they're going to go into a variety of other jobs that are affected by technology. So that is the broad mission. We do that through a variety of areas, through the curriculum that we have. So some of the latest courses that we have now are in artificial intelligence. We have courses right now that are focused on fintech. We have 2 courses now in product management. And as Jerry mentioned, a course in China focused on some of the things that are happening significantly there. Let me now talk about some of the history of what's gone on in technology that gives you a sense of where we are today. So if we go back to the 1980s, the very beginning of technology was the era of the PC. And the PCs were not connected. It was the very beginning of automation. And that then led to a period in the 90s and 2000s with the era of the internet. And now all these devices were connected. That then led to the era of the smartphone. And in the smartphone era, this is going back to 2007 when the iPhone came out and all the domino effects occurred with Android and a lot of other devices. That idea about being mobile, that you don't need to be in a home or office, you can be anywhere you need to be, and you can be connected and do the things that you need to do. That really was that next wave of growth. The final area, which is the area that we're in today, is the era of data and artificial intelligence. So when you think about all of the data that is being created from e-commerce, from social networks, from searches that people do in a whole variety of areas, it's creating all sorts of new product and service applications. Insights are going to be in things, thank you very much. Insights are going to be in areas of enterprise and consumer, in healthcare, et cetera. So now, what are some of the key technology trends? And this gets to the present today. If you look at what are the technology enablers, the first thing to talk about are the speed of networks. So the 5th generation networks, which today are 10 to 100 times faster than 4th generation networks, are the ones that are going to power new applications in areas like autonomous vehicle, in image recognition, in healthcare, et cetera, that we'll talk about in a minute. In the US, most of the carriers are talking here today that they will have about half the country covered in terms of population that will have 5th generation service. In China, by the way, there's a 10-to-1 lead over the US in terms of the number of base stations deployed in 5G. And we'll talk more about 5G and what's happening in China, but I think it's always important to kind of look broadly at a global landscape about how well we're positioned or not. The second thing are connected devices, the Internet of Things. So the forecast is in the next 10 to 20 years, there will be 10 to 20 billion connected devices. Wearable devices like Fitbit, cars that are going to be connected via autonomous vehicles, buildings are going to be connected, homes, et cetera, and all of those represent a point of access to the internet and information. And again, that will create new services that are much more insight-based. Third area is cloud computing. So the ability to access and analyze data that's out there, now that there's all of this data, so wherever you are, that ability to access data. The other point that Adam raised is cloud computing has notably reduced the cost of companies starting. All the things, years ago, the companies would have to set up data centers and have expensive software applications to run themselves. That more and more is going away. And then the final piece is the role of data. And the important concept on data here is data being used to predict some future activity and something that drives a new product or service. Now, data certainly is used to analyze historic activities. But one of the things I always listen to when I hear speakers, when they refer to data as it helps me analyze something in the past, I realize they're not yet in the current mode of what's happening with data. Think of autonomous vehicles. The ability of data to predict cars are going to be coming in front of you, people are going to be walking in front of you, and how you need to navigate, that is a predictive capability. The ability in healthcare to diagnose certain types of illnesses based on somebody's current health state, based on the status of research, et cetera, those things all are predictive in nature. So what are some of these interesting applications? I tried to list on one slide here my top 5 or 6 areas of innovation that I'm personally most excited about. Autonomous vehicles would be the first one. Autonomous vehicles, when you look at big cities, small cities, et cetera, the amount of time that people spend in a car that could be spent being entertained, engaged in commercial activities, working, sleeping, whatever people want to do is huge. And I think this is why you're seeing massive amounts of capital going into autonomous vehicles. And autonomous vehicles for consumer applications, for enterprise applications, et cetera. Second area, virtual assistants. So if you think about Siri that you have on your iPhone and a dramatic expansion of the capabilities of Siri, the ability to understand who you are, where you are, what you do, all with opt-in, so there's got to be an opt-in capability, and then to be able to answer your questions, your issues, et cetera. And if you take this all the way out, there's a lot of talk that people that work in call centers, that more and more virtual assistants will be used. And Google's done a variety of trials that show that many people don't even know they're talking to a virtual assistant. It's getting to be that good. So that would be the second area of innovation that I would call out. Third area would be voice-based internet. So today, especially in developed markets, most people are texting and typing. Their way to access the internet is by typing. More and more it is shifting to voice. So if you think of Alexa as an example in your home, but more and more in developing markets where first-time internet access is occurring, there may be literacy issues, and the ability to speak what you need is a real fundamental way that people can now access the internet. It changes the game for a lot of people that are used to just having a typing-based interaction with the internet. Fourth area, diagnostic tools and recommendation engines. The ability to take in information, think in healthcare, if you had the ability to understand somebody's genetic background, again, current health state, status of research that's going on, and to be able to better understand and diagnose a health condition of somebody would create huge, huge value. If you look at media companies and what media companies are doing to understand preferences to more and more drive content decisions, Netflix would be a good example of this. Fifth area, Quint plays. So a lot of the telecom companies have started when they had triple plays. They had basic voice service and pay TV service. They've launched more and more into mobile service. And AT&T here now is the latest example of a Quint play. And they're obviously a very interesting one because there's a lot of discussions with an activist investor. But they now, with their investment in Warner Media and with 5G, have the ability to understand better users and deliver specified, customized content on the go. So as opposed to everything being in a 30-minute format, it can be on the go when you're commuting, when you're walking to an office, et cetera, et cetera. Last item is there's still over 3 billion people in the world that don't have internet access. They may have a smartphone, so they can talk on the phone, but they don't have internet access. That number is rapidly declining, the number of people that don't have internet access. So if you go to India, players like Reliance Jio, are creating almost free 4th-generation mobile service. And that company, in 2 years' time, has gotten 350 million users. If you look at companies like OneWeb, low cost satellite communications for broadband communications, a much more cost-effective way to getting access to the internet. So here are a bunch of examples of where innovation is happening. And again, this is going to lead into our discussion because you want to be in areas that are creating lots of value. The more value that there is, the more employment generally that occurs, the more wealth that gets created, et cetera. But I think you have to have kind of a mindset about where do you think value creation is going to occur. So what are the implications of all of this innovation? In general, and this is kind of macro level, there's always exceptions on either side, but in general, value is shifting from hardware to software. It's shifting more and more to data. And companies that don't have the ability to access data and create new services often are getting into difficult positions. So companies, automakers that have to think about autonomous vehicles are in a difficult spot. Now, a lot of interesting investments are being made, but it's an interesting question about disruption and who's going to win in this future environment. Remember that on data, the ability to predict is absolutely essential, not look at past tense. So this is why a lot of the discussion has happened about you need scale, you need quantity of data, quality of data, you need the ability to access data, and with all that, you can create better offerings. That generally suggests larger tech companies. You have on the opposing side, especially coming out of Europe, a lot of antitrust sentiment that says big companies are going to do naughty things and you better watch out for the scale that's going on. And that is a live battle that is happening. More and more immersive experiences. So augmented reality and virtual reality, there are more and more trials going on as an example of people going into a virtual department store, virtual retail, and understanding where different departments are, understanding where inventory is, and being able to close a transaction. It almost eliminates entirely the need to physically go into a store. Now, this is not today, but it's things that are being worked on, and the pace of evolution and innovation is quite significant. At a macro level, a lot of this means that there's going to be a threat to middlemen. And we're going to talk about it more in the panel discussion, but a lot of the discussion on the future of work, there have been forecasts out there that suggest 20 to 30% of jobs will go away in the next 20 to 30 years. Kai-Fu Lee, the former head of Google in China, has done amazing work about where data is, and he's predicted in China that about 30% of jobs will go away in the next 20 to 30 years. A lot of it comes from repetitive jobs that are no longer necessary because of levels of automation. So an issue for society to deal with, as we talked about in the earlier discussion about what's the role of government and leaders. The other thing is with platform-based businesses. So this is Airbnb and Uber and Lyft, et cetera, working on a platform where you don't need to invest in lots and lots of assets creates a huge value. That allows more efficiency of use of assets, whether that be vehicles or hotel rooms, et cetera. We talked about more and more voice-based communication and less texting and typing. That may change who are some of the current kind of dominant players in the world of search and a lot of other internet services. And then notable change in workforce requirements. So yes, there are going to probably be some new jobs created. The question is it a one-to-one for the jobs that are lost? Give you a stat here, autonomous vehicles, if you look at that alone, in the US alone, truck drivers and bus drivers, there are 3 million of them in the US. It's the single largest SIC code. So it creates a huge issue. And by the way, if you look at the stats down to the kind of county and state level, the percent of people involved is truck drivers in California is lowest in the country. If you look at Joplin, Missouri, it's one of the highest. So the impact that could be felt is going to be very uneven across the world. So all of this leads into now our panel discussion, and I've listed here some questions to consider that we're going to talk about during the panel discussion and beyond. So the first thing is where are the greatest areas of value creation? What is your view on innovation, and what is your view on use cases and value that's going to be created? Commensurate with that is where's value destruction going to occur? because most of the cases of innovation generally are eliminating labor. That's kind of a common theme on a lot of the use cases on innovation-based businesses. So what industries are going to get disrupted, and what does that kind of average out? If we were to look at Los Angeles, what are the debits and the credits in terms of creation of wealth and jobs, et cetera, versus not? What is the role of technology in this? So how much technology is needed to create this value? And overall, how is Los Angeles positioned? So already Los Angeles got a much better presence of technology companies. The question is, what is the overall goal, and how do you get to that ultimate goal? So how is Los Angeles positioned compared to San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, New York, Shenzhen? There's a variety of technology-oriented communities. Is Los Angeles going to be positioned well? Is it going to get a disproportionate share of benefit or not? What is the impact of China and the trade issues that are going on there? And then importantly, what does Los Angeles need to do to win in the future? So I'm from the Bay Area originally. I always got to acknowledge my conflict of interest here. A lot of what Adam talked about, this kind of closed environment, is very dominant in the Bay Area. The tie between Stanford and Cal and the venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road and large tech companies, et cetera, creates an ecosystem that tends to propel more and more innovation. Question is that going to work forever? And if it is going to work and it's the right model, do we have the right piece of that going here or not? But I'd like to get a lot more discussion there. And what is the overall view of leadership? What is the role of business leaders, city leaders, et cetera? So with that setup of where things are going with innovation and product, let me invite our panelists to come up.